Hi, a big greeting from Italy. Yesterday, five guys were present at Stadium of Light and broke luck to the team. Great victory that was absolutely needed. It's a fantastic day. As soon as we arrived, immediately and a super welcome. Lot of photo outside the stadium, and then we attended the match. At the end, we waiting for the players for photos and autographs. Thanks for Chris Waters. We concluded with a visit to the Fast Museum. It's always it's always nice to be in Sunderland. We feel at home and part of this community. Thank you. Away the lads, away the Mackems, away the fans, away the branch of the world.
Here's Tom Watson. Shoots! Oh, he scored!
There he is! Tommy Watson!
Tommy Watson has opened his account for Sunderland! And Roberts now. Crowd on their feet. Roberts has got options. Tommy Watson!
Yes! There it is!
Hello and welcome to Black Cats Chat, the Sunderland AFC International Fans Podcast. My name is Lee Thirkell. I'm from the Bilbao Black Cats. And today with me, I've got Michael Dunne from the Irish Black Cats. Good morning, Michael.
Hi Lee, how are you?
Good, mate. A bit under the weather, but we'll fight on. And for the first time, I've also got Alistair in Melbourne, in Australia. Good evening, Alistair.
Yeah, good evening, good morning. How you going?
Good, mate. All good. So it's your first time on the pod, and
It is.
Yeah. And are you nervous?
A little. Look, I once went on Sky Sports on a fan zone at the last minute on an invitation, and I was like story for another time, but I was like a rabbit in the headlights. So I'm kind of thinking that the anonymity of Zoom, this is going to be much easier. So bit nervous, but we'll be fine.
You'll be fine, mate. I gave you 6 days notice at least anyway, so anyway, so yesterday we got back to winning ways finally after 6 games without a win. We had a 2-1 win at Stoke in horrible conditions, typical northeast weather. But before we get into that, Alistair, as it's your first turn on the pod, could we hear your Sunderland story, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm from Nottingham originally. I'm from a small village outside Nottingham on the way between Nottingham and Leicester. I grew up in a household where sport just wasn't a thing at all. My mum and dad just didn't go for any kind of sport at all. I had an uncle that went for Forest a bit during the glory days under Clough. And when they won the European Cup, was it in 79, 80? I can't remember. So for me, growing up, football wasn't a thing. I went to Sunderland Uni and I joined a local band, a local kind of like, I wouldn't say punk band there, but they were like alternative. And I became good friends with the guys there, and I was just asked one day, "Do you want to go see Sunderland?" And it was just after Buxton had finished and Reed had started, and I think my first game was against Man United in the FA Cup, and I remember it because Cantona was playing, and I remember that Paul Parker should have been sent off in the first half. I remember that really clearly, and I remember the ref having a conversation with Ferguson at half time and saying, and Parker didn't come back on for the second half. We lost it narrowly, and please someone correct me. I think it was 2-1 to United. I could be wrong, but yeah, that was my journey, and I think I just fell in love with it. I think going to a stadium like Roker Park, like I took my brother there years later, and he's not a football fan either, but he was just blown away by the sheer noise. So that was my journey into like not just football but Sunderland. So
Yes, it's
yeah,
kind of curious that like you're from Nottingham and you had no kind of relationship with Sunderland until your uni days. But
yeah,
you got sucked in, I suppose, no?
yeah. Look, I got sucked in because I remember I was huge into music when I got to Sunderland, like huge. I was like really mainlining like bands like the Ramones and Television and Talking Heads and stuff like that, all that CBGB stuff. And there was an ad for a drummer for a band, and I was a terrible drummer. Like but I met this bunch of local lads from Sunderland, and I just yeah, it like that first trip to Roker Park. I don't even remember who we played. I don't remember who we played, but that was it. I was just sucked in, hook, line, and sinker. So that was it.
Yeah. And how long have you been living in Australia now for?
I've been here since 2007. So what's that, 17 years?
Yeah. And
Yeah, fair time.
is it easy to watch the matches over there? Do you get together with people or not? Or are you kind of out in the way?
No, I don't get together. It's I was talking to my partner about this earlier. Like, she was like, "Why don't you go and watch games with people?" And I think pre-COVID, I was really keen to like get to like games, join with the local supporters branch, and then COVID hit, and I think like a lot of people, I just became a little bit of a hermit. And it's only kind of now where we were like, what, 2 years out of the pandemic, that I'm actually thinking I actually want to like re-engage and like catch up with people and start talking and watching games with people again. So it's on my radar. It's on my radar, but it hasn't been for a while.
And do you get back often or now and again to watch a match or to visit family?
It's funny. I went back. I went back last year, this last January, and I really wanted to take the kids to my sons to an FA Cup game. Couldn't get to Sunderland, so I took them to the only one I could find, which was West Brom versus, I don't remember they were playing. It's like 7-1, and like it's crazy. But the time before that, I took them to Scunthorpe, um, and we played Scunthorpe. And I remember I'd said to them, like, kids, I could only get tickets in the away end, and I'd said, guys, you just need to be really quiet if we score. Because here in Melbourne, if you go to an Aussie rules football game, everybody just goes together. So even if it's the most bitter rivalry, like someone like Collingwood versus Melbourne, for example, all the people will go to MCG, which is like, 100,000 seat stadium. Everyone sits next to each other. And I'd said to the kids, look, we're sitting in the away end. If we score, you just need to be really quiet and just don't say anything. And my eldest son was like, Dad, you're just talking shit. Nothing's going to kick off. And we scored, and it was, and I'm having a mental block who scored. Um, and a Sunderland fan had got in the way end, and like it all just kicked off, and like a fight started. The cops came, they dragged these people out, and my kids were just like, "Holy shit, we're just gonna get out of here, Dad." And I'm like, "It's fine, just keep quiet." But yeah, that was the last time I saw Sunderland, and that was like about 3 years ago. And I'm just trying to think. It's the young lad we sold.
Imagine.
It'll come.
Josh
Marja,
Badger.
yeah, Marja
Yeah.
scored. Yeah, absolutely. He scored the opener in that game. And I think it finished 1-1. But that was the last time I saw us play live.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's probably like the most exciting thing for Scunthorpe as well in a long time as well. Never mind that. That's brilliant, mate. Earl, anyway, thanks for that, Alistair. Now then, Michael, on to the match yesterday. Unfortunately, you had a bit of a mad morning yesterday. You had a flight coming over from Dublin, but it was cancelled last minute. Gutted for you, mate, because there was like a large group of you, wasn't it, coming over?
Yeah, I was only saying in the airport yesterday when we got there, I met a few of the lads and I said, God, this is actually the biggest group of everyone going together in a while. I think it's because the flights now have changed. So if we've a 12:30 kickoff, we can sort of get a flight home at 5 o'clock, which has you back in Dublin at 6. So you can still go have your dinner at home and go for a few pints back in Dublin by the time you're back. But yeah, there was a good few lads in the airport. So it was disappointing, more so because we were nearly lined up, queued up in the boarding area to go through. And then they checked people through and then just basically said, no, the flight's not going. One of the guys had the flight tracker up on his phone. Apparently it was like circulating around Dublin Airport, couldn't land because of the wind, just returned back to Newcastle. So, look, at the end of the day, what can you do? We just went into town then and watched the match in one of the pubs in the city. So, every cloud has a silver lining, I suppose, and we got the win. So I'm not going to give out too much.
Yeah, no, that's still a bollocks though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But anyway, Michael, yesterday the 2-1 win over Stoke, starting lineup. There was no Dennis Cirk, and he didn't come back into the starting 11. He went on the bench. And the other decision that was to be made was whether Patrick Roberts would keep his place. But Elise came in, and Roberts kept his place. Right decision, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Circle's only back from injury. I know obviously he's probably fairly physically fit because it was only his wrist that was broken, but I was told that I think he was still in the cast properly up until Friday, so I don't think he was probably ready to come back in fully. And given the conditions yesterday, how slippy it was, if he started first 5 minutes, some dodgy challenge, it could have ended badly for him. So I'd say they were just being a bit precautionary with him. I mean, at least he's been fairly solid for us anytime he plays. I know we'll probably get into the goal after, but I think more talk about Roberts, and people seem to be maybe disillusioned or disappointed with his performance lately. Obviously, the penalty missed against Sheffield United would have gone against him, and I know there was a lot of talk about dropping Roberts. I don't really know who you bring in. Do you put Connolly in on the wing, or does Isidore go out to the wing? Someone else goes up front. People obviously say Mienda, but I know Mienda played there against Millwall. I don't really think that's his position at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're sort of stuck on who we have in terms of wingers. Like, I mean, it looks at the moment that we literally have two wingers for the whole team. So I think Roberts probably is going to keep starting matches until January transfer window and see who comes in, or if we get Romain Mundle back sometime in the new year.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Alistair, do you think that Roberts gets a bit of unfair criticism sometimes because he hasn't scored goals? He hasn't scored that many goals in a long time. Doesn't seem to get many assists. But I think it's not because a lack of trying. I think he does try. I just sometimes feel like he's very unlucky. Do you not think that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, and I was thinking about this today, is that like we've got a bunch of young players now that have set the bar high. I remember a time when we were trying to get rid of players like, Didier and Dong and people like that just couldn't shift. And now we've got a bunch of really good young players that have set the bar high. And I think for Roberts, he's probably the victim of his own success. Like, he came in, he's done really well for us. He set that bar high. We had him on the right, Jack Clark on the left. And I think for a player like him, yeah, he set that bar really high. And when he falls below it, like we're a demanding bunch of supporters, we really are. And I think some of the stick is unfair, but I think at the same time, we know what he's capable of. So, yeah, 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Michael said, like, who do you bring in? Because I don't think Mayenda is a winger.
No, he's not a winger. He's raw, and I think he's got potential. And I think those two goals he scored earlier in the season, I think, we've now got competition for that up front place. But like Pavida's not fit. I don't know when he's going to be fit again. I don't like Michael's right. I don't know who you bring in.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah. Michael, then the stats yesterday, I mean, it was quite a dominant display in terms of like bombarding their goal because we had 18 shots and I think 10 were on target, I think. But if you look at possession, Stoke actually had more possession than us. They had 55% possession. So, but that's been our kind of norm, hasn't it, this season, where we don't seem to want possession as much as we used to. We're happy to let the other team have it, and our game is just like basically trying to break fast. So, in terms of the shots on target, it was a better return than previous games. Is it a lack of? Is it a concern that we're not hitting that we're not hitting the back of the net more often, like we used to?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a bit of a concern. I was kind of talking to one of the lads yesterday, and he's always glass half full when we talk about these things. But he's like, but we're winning, we're creating so many chances, we're battering teams every game. I said, yeah, but it is an issue in itself, in my opinion, if we go 6-7 games without able to like regularly score goals, or if you think of some of the games lately where we did score, the Coventry match was two worldies from Sirkin and Wilson. Connolly scored against Millwall. That was a volley outside the box. The sort of goals that aren't going to happen consistently over a season. So my biggest concern in terms of our toothlessness, I think, is up front. Obviously, we have Isidore. I think he's a great player. I really do like him. He's a good link player, brings other players into the game. But if you looked at the game yesterday, the amount of chances he's missing, like they're not even chances that are really, really difficult. Like, I mean, there was one, I think, where the ball sort of bounced outside the box, and instead of just dinking it over the keeper, he just kicked it straight at him.
Yeah.
The cross from Elise came in another stage, and it was point blank range. He put it wide. It just shows to me he doesn't look like a striker who's a natural goal scorer. I think he scores big moment goals, if you get what I mean. Like
Yeah.
he gets goals. He'll score something out of nothing, but I think we're definitely lacking a poacher up front, someone who can finish those chances that are, you're going to get your bread and butter chances that you're going to get every game. So yeah, obviously, I don't think it's ever an issue for us that we're creating. We have such good midfielders and wingers that we mentioned that will create the chances. But do we have the man up front who's going to put the ball on the back of the net regularly for enough at the moment? And again, we've put ourselves in a position now going into the second half of the season that we might get promoted. Are we going to stick our twist here? Are we going to look in January and find someone else who can improve the striking area, or are we going to rest on our laurels and see how we get on? I think that could be the difference between us sort of pushing for the top two or sticking around the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That and Alistair last season, Ipswich went up, but they went up thanks to the goals from Kiefer Moore, who they got on loan for the second half of the season. Do we need a signing like that? Maybe it's a loan signing with a bit more experience.
It's a good question. I think Michael made a really good point there. I like Isidore as a player, like that goal against Oxford, for example. Like, I can't remember the time when we've had that player that will just smash in those Hollywood goals, But we do need someone that's going to put them in regularly. Look, I think my concern is we've got a lot of players up front at the moment. We've got Connolly, Hamir, Isidore, Rusin. Yeah, and
Abdullahi,
we haven't.
yeah.
Yeah, we haven't seen these guys for a long time. So it's like, I think we do. I think we do need that striker that Kevin Phillips type that can just bang in those easy chances. But I think we're going to have to shift some people first. I think we've got a lot of players on our books that aren't performing. I just want to know what we're going to do with them, really.
Yeah. And that's my other point, Michael, is that, yeah, we've got all these players, Rusin, Connolly. Do we not need maybe to change the formation to like two up front to kind of get these guys involved? Because there's always been there's also been a shout for Isidore, like having Mayenda up front with him.
Yeah.
To give him some support. Do you think maybe we could go to a back three and play two up front, or do you just think it's out of the question?
I think it's out of the question, isn't it? I think Labrie was asked about that maybe a few weeks ago when we had a few injuries. If you mix it up, and he kind of said it's just not on the radar at all for them. I think he sort of likes having the three in midfield because, who are you going to drop between Neil, Job, and Rig at the moment? Probably none of them.
Yeah.
He likes his two wingers. So I think the system will stay the same. Could you mix it up like we were talking earlier about taking? Do we put Wilson into one of the winging positions? We put Mayenda up front. That's sort of maybe something he could do. There's going to be loads of games over the next few weeks. Surely he's going to change the team a little bit. But there seems to be a hesitancy of sort of changing formation completely. He likes to sort of stick to the sort of setup he's had since the start of the season. Like Aaron Connolly, I think it's kind of strange. All of a sudden, he's completely gone out of the picture in the last 4 games. He can't even get a minute off the bench. He scored against Millwall and then hasn't been seen since. So, I kind of feel bad for him. I before he came in, obviously he's Irish, but I never really rated him. I thought he had a bit of a, he obviously is documented now. He obviously had his issues, but I thought he had kind of a bad attitude. But he seems to be making all the right noises. Then he gets his first goal, and then he can't even get a look in now. It just seems a bit strange all of a sudden that he's gone from the team.
Yeah, I agree.
Do we mix it up now? On Tuesday, we've Bristol. Bristol got a hammering against Portsmouth yesterday. It could be a good opportunity to bring someone like Connolly in.
Yeah.
But he seems very hesitant to make it like wholesale changes to the setup.
Yeah. No, and I think Connolly played all right in that game, didn't he? Played as a number 10 just off Isidore, and it actually suited him, that role. But anyway, Alistair, the goal from Stoke came as a shell shock, didn't it, really? We didn't expect that after 7 minutes or 6 minutes to go a goal down. It was like it was a ball over the top, wasn't it? That Alicia just completely misjudged, didn't follow his runner. But yeah, it just it wasn't expected. Well, it wasn't on the script, was it not? To have Stoke score after 6 minutes, was it not?
No, look, it wasn't. And I think, look, our back four's, had a bit of rotation, a bit of like change recently, without Soaking at the back. And we saw it the week before when Ian made that shocking pass back to Metham that, you know, I'd like to see our back four a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more. I'm not sure what the phrase I'm looking for is, but I'd like to see us a little bit more organized and disciplined than we are. We shouldn't be conceding. We shouldn't be conceding goals like that at that time. I mean, we're lucky we got back in the game, and I didn't expect Watson to be the kind of catalyst for that either. But look, I think if we've got a settled back four, if we've got someone like whom we've got an Ian or Ballard in the middle with Metham, and then we've got someone like Sokin at the back, I think we're looking good. I think when we start bringing people in and out, that's when we start to look a bit shaky.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, isn't it? I mean, when you have like a settled back four, they always say like the keeper in the back four is like the core of the team.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and I think we've benefited from that we haven't had to make too many changes. I mean, Hume, O'Nien,
Yeah,
Ballard, Mepham, I mean, they've been the kind of the core, and then we've had to rotate because of Serkin's injuries and now Elise's injuries. But Michael, on that goal then, was it just a case of Elise ball watching? Because he wasn't tight to his defender, like to the forward, to Kumas.
Yeah.
Kumas was just like basically running onto the ball, but there was a good meter and a half between them.
Yeah.
So was it just a case of ball watching from Elisa?
I was trying to work it out. I think was there maybe a possibility they were trying to play an offside or they're trying to push up and then Lisa maybe was a bit slow getting up with the line and suddenly he was kind of one-on-one long ball and he was caught for pace completely. I think he mixture of lapse of concentration or sort of not following maybe the orders of the centre halves, but um yeah, in fairness, we nearly got away with it as well. Patterson made a good save from the original and until it kind of trickled across. Um I mean, I would like these things happen sometimes. At least he kind of sometimes can have a lapse of concentration. I do wonder, is he better in the centre half or left back row? But as Alistair is saying, maybe when there's a bit of mixing and matching and hasn't had the sort of consistent back four, you
yeah,
sort of you lose that disconnect or that relationship you've built up with the same players that you're playing week on week. So, I'd say probably you might have more changes again Tuesday. You could probably see Sirkin and Meffam come in possibly, and we might have back to our sort of regular back four. And maybe you might see over the next few weeks then if they stay fit that we'll have the sort of the relationships built up again that were making us so solid earlier in the season.
Yeah, and I think like Elisa at left back, he is an option, but I think he gives you that solidity at the back more than Serkin does. But going forward, Elisa doesn't have that quality that Serkin has. Would you agree with that, Alistair?
yeah. Look, I think I was always a bit 50-50 on Sirkin, but I think he's been brilliant for us so far this season. I think he's definitely got that ability to get forward, as you say, and his defensive work seems better than it has been. Um, and he just seems to have a little bit more intelligence around him at the moment and a little bit more of savvy about how the game is played. And I think when he's on the park, we seem to look better at them. Yeah, so I think we've missed him when he's been away.
Yeah. And then a minute later, Michael, well, less than a minute later, Sunderland fans in the stadium were probably like still saying their fucking hells and all that. Tommy Watson picks up the ball, runs a couple of yards, and then whacks one in the bottom corner. I mean, I was chuffed with the lad because I think he's had a baptism of fire, really, hasn't he? Because he had a couple of appearances from the bench earlier in the season, came on for Mundle later on, and he had a few nervous touches, but in general he did all right. He looked dangerous. No, he was direct, but then he had a few games where he didn't get any minutes, and then all of a sudden Mundle gets injured and he's thrown in. And the first few games he was a bit, I wouldn't say out of his depth, but it was a bit naive, wasn't he? He didn't look
Yeah,
comfortable. He was like, for me, he was playing with his shackles on.
yeah,
But then after I think it was like the Millwall game, wasn't it? Oh no, the Sheffield United game. The Sheffield United game, he really came into his own, and I thought that after the 15 minutes in the Sheffield United game, the shackles came off, and that's what like Tommy Watson can do.
Yeah,
But I think it was basically because Lebris didn't give him more minutes from the bench in the previous games to kind of bed him in to make him ready to step up. He just kind of got thrown in there, and I think he struggled the first few games, but
yeah,
now he's kind of got that confidence, and I think if he keeps on playing the way he is, I think Bundle's going to struggle to get back in the team.
yeah. I mean, maybe I think sometimes you just have to be thrown in, don't you? Like a baptism of fire can sometimes just be a good thing. He has to get stuck into it and sort of learn it on the job. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching him against Watford. He came on late on in that match in September, and I was like, did we actually sell Jack Clark in the end or anything? Because they just play like they have a similar way of playing. They're very very similar kind of style winger. Um, but I think Watson has a lot going for him. He's been really impressive, as you said. The Sheffield United game last week, I thought he was brilliant. He won us the penalty. He had to back Sheffield United back four all over the place, and yeah, he got a lovely goal yesterday. It was a really calm finish from outside the box, and it sort of like trickled into the corner, and no keeper diving for it or anything. It looked just pinpoint perfection, sort of accuracy where he put it. But um, he's going to be a really good player, and there's been talk already about Brighton going from last summer. I would not be surprised if you start hearing again in January. But I would like to think that, at this stage of his career, is there any point in him going to Brighton like in January or anything like that? He's only getting into the team. He needs to play football. And as you said, the way he's going, if this continues, he's probably going to keep Mundle out of the team as well. So it's really good for him. And I've heard a lot of talk about him, in fairness, and you can see why he's got a lot of ability.
Yeah. And the thing is, I thought his decision making yesterday, Alistair, was much better than the previous games. He was in the previous games. I thought he was taking shots when the shot wasn't really on. He was like passing down to Lise, who was going on the on the wing. He was playing it back when he had to be playing back. I think in the previous games, he was just basically being direct and going for goal every time and seeing his shots blocked. I think it was one of the games where we had about 20 shots, and I think 10 must have been from him that were blocked outside the box. So I was really impressed with his decision making yesterday. What did you think?
Yeah, look, we got to remember he's a young guy. He's a young guy, and he's a young guy that's stepping into a role there. We had Jack Clark, who was like, this incredibly influential player that we all loved, and made that position his own. Like, look, I remember back to like those glory days under Reed where we had those classic wingers of Summerby and Johnson, and then we've got Jack Clark coming to that role. And he just smashed it, and we all loved him, and he was like a one-man show for a while. So I think for someone coming into that position is really, really hard. And, Watson's a young player, and being asked to fill that role where Clark's come in, done amazing, and then he's, obviously he's gone to Ipswich, and then Mundle's come in and sort of made that role his own. But that's huge pressure. As a young player, that is huge amounts of pressure. And I think, of course, you're going to make a bunch of mistakes doing that. But the maturity he showed yesterday, I thought was incredible. And to get those two goals was a sign of that maturity he's showing. And I think it's great that the club given have given him that responsibility and given him that ownership. So I'm really hoping he can kick on from here. And as Michael said, it's going to be hard for Mundle from here to come in now and try and take that position back from him, because I
Yep,
think Watson's made it his own.
yep, absolutely. And I mean, Michael, I watched the extended highlights this morning before we came on, and the majority of times it was just Tommy Watson bursting down the left wing,
Yeah,
getting in behind. So that was like really nice to see. But there are comparisons between Watson and Mundle and how they got into the team, because Mundle had the same problem last season that he couldn't get a look in because of Jack Clark, and he had a
Yeah,
few appearances now and then kind of people weren't impressed by him, were they not? They were saying like, "Oh, he doesn't look all that," and then as soon as Clark left, he basically got thrown in. And he took his chance, didn't he? So
yeah,
you are right in a way
yeah,
that a baptism of fire is sometimes the way to go, but I think it would be nice as well to kind of like give them a few more minutes in there from the bench to kind of like, especially with him because he's a young lad, he's only 18. So no, hopefully it continues. Anyway then, Michael, on the 86th minute, we finally broke Stoke's defence, thanks to a bit of a deflection. But I think nobody can complain. I think it was deserved, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think we deserved a bit of luck after the last few weeks. There's other games there, like the West Brom one, where we get a goal that looked
Yeah.
marginally, if offside at all. So they're the breaks. We got it yesterday, and we know we were the team trying to win the game. So I think you get that bit of luck when we were kept pushing and pushing. I was a bit concerned when you're hitting after 80, 85 minutes. Was it going to come? I was like, it's going to be another 1-1. And, the draws can suck the life out of the whole thing. And it was becoming sort of like that we just needed to get the monkey off our back, get a win somehow. And the ball came into Watson just inside the box. And, yeah, he finished it really well. It took a little bit of deflection, caught the keeper sides to the other side. But it was overall the win. Like, I mean, the amount of chances we created, really, if we had a striker, like we said earlier, that could have been 4 or 5-1.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
the 2-1 game. So, the scoreline probably doesn't reflect the dominance that we had overall, because I don't really remember Stoke creating many chances at all in the game. So,
No.
yeah, it was a well-deserved win, and you're just sort of hoping we can kick on now, because we've got kind of a nice fixture list coming up. We've a good few home games coming up over Christmas. And like in this league, it's so funny, if you get 3-4 wins together, it just changes, the table changes so quickly. So yeah, we're back on track.
No, in terms of chances, I mean, Watson could have had probably 4 or 5. I think he hit the post,
Yeah.
he had his shot saved. Obviously, Isidore had a couple of chances. We had the disallowed goal. So yeah, I mean, it could have been like a rugby score, couldn't it? Really. Right then, Alistair, Lebris and his subs, or his lack of subs, or his delayed subs. Are you kind of concerned about this? That a lot of players on the bench, as Michael mentioned before, like Connolly, they're not getting many minutes. They've been kind of just like isolated after a little cameo. Same with Alexic. I mean, if I think we've got 4 games in 10 days over the Christmas period, and if we get any injuries or any suspensions, and we've got to throw these lads in, they're going to be going in cold. I mean, surely you need like match sharpness, don't you?
You do, and I think I feel this has been like a recurring theme with head coaches. It's not just Labris, it's coaches before about the substitutions. Look, I think in an ideal world, if you're winning a game and you're winning comfortably, like Ferguson at United, you bring those players on when you're winning and you blood them and you get them up to speed. I get as a coach, if your job is to just purely get those 3 points, you've got to think about what the right thing is to do. And you think, do I bring on a young player, or do I stick with the team I've got and hope that I can get a result from this? It's a really hard one. I think it's a luxury as a coach if you're winning all the time. Like Ferguson, like when they had players like Scholes and Beckham, etc., to like be able to bring young players in. For someone like Lebris, who's like thinking I'm going to be judged purely on my win record, it's a different story. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, Lee. And I would like to think that our younger players are getting all of the minutes they can. But at the same point, I'm really mindful that the coach is really thinking about, I've got to get these 3 points.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
that's a good
but
point.
you've made a really good point, though, that we've got a really lot. The championship is a really long, hard season. It's a lot of games on its own without like the FA Cup and like the Carabao Cup and all of those games. It's a really long, hard season. As soon as you got a couple of injuries, you're pretty much screwed, as we're finding now. I think the sooner you can get those younger players in, the better. But yeah, it's a real balancing act. I'm sitting on the fence here getting splinters, and I know that. But yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd be
no.
interested to see what Michael thought of that.
Well, Mike, I was going to talk to you about Rig because last season we saw Job just getting flogged and he was just like ineffective
Yeah,
because he was knackered. Is there a risk of Rig going through the same thing? Because he's only
Yeah,
17 as well, you know what I mean? So he's
yeah,
a
yeah,
bit.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was only talking to my brother about it yesterday because he's over there at the moment and he was watching the game and he said like you need to take Rig off, like he needs a rest for a couple of games. But I think it's like Riggs nearly put himself in that position now where he's one of our leaders now and one of our main men.
Yeah.
And you got to obviously be conscious that he is 17, but who it's the balancing act, as you said, who comes in, who do you take off? I mean, we got Alexic, but they seem to think that he's just not ready. I mean, obviously he's a man adapting to a new country, new language, new environment. So he doesn't just have the footballing side of it, he has the kind of whole personal and lifestyle side of it as well. Unfortunately with the injury of Alan Brown, especially midfield, we don't really have anyone to come in. So I've said this a few times, like there seems to be, we're going to probably have to do a bit of January transfer window shopping here because there is probably an over-reliance on the same maybe 13, 14 lads so far this season. Obviously that's impacted by the injuries we got to Brown and Mundell, but squad depth is definitely an issue. And, as the season goes on, there is going to be signs of tiredness and exhaustion. So I think we need to maybe build up our reinforcements a bit more just to sort of help with that. And, obviously there's been a lot of talk maybe that Jordan Henderson could be coming in January as someone in midfield for a bit of experience. Now, I don't know if it will be Henderson or someone like that, but an option like that in midfield would actually be ideal. Maybe someone who's, like the likes of Brown, who's kind of run of the mill. He's been there a few years in the league, has played international football. So I wouldn't be against maybe just, getting someone in there for even a season just to help us out.
Yeah, no, I think, we haven't even seen Salish yet, have we not? And
I keep forgetting about him as well.
Well, we haven't even, hopefully he'll be coming for the Christmas period. Right, fellas, we've got a minute left, so very quickly, your predictions for Tuesday night against Bristol City. Alistair, what's your
2-0.
prediction? 2-0?
2-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think we, like Michael said, we broke we broke the monkey's back and we're back on the horse, and I think it'll be an easy win. We'll probably deserve to win by more, so I'm going to say 2-0.
2-0. Michael?
Yeah, I say the same, 2-0. Comfortable win.
Mepham back in?
I'd say so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Who
He's
gets
been a rock for us.
Yeah. Ballard, I'd say.
Ballard, I would say Ballard as well. Yeah.
It's harsh because Ballard's is a great player, but I think Mepham's been so great for us. He has to go back in. So, yeah, Ballard.
Yeah. Well, all right then, lads. Thank you very much for your time this morning, this evening. Alistair, great debut, mate. Michael, pleasure as always. And I'll see you next time. How are the lads?
How are the lads? See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm called Morten. I'm from Germany and I've supported Sunderland since 2013. Sunderland take over everywhere we go.